Korean War. Evaluating connections between the Japanese occupation of Korea and the Korean War conflict by Adrian and Ella.
Today, Korea is split up into two countries, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, North Korea, and the Republic of Korea, South Korea. But before 1945, it was a unified country under the control of Japan.
Using the diagram showing the 6 stages of conflict, we can examine the Korean War.
Stage 1. Beginnings. Japan had occupied Korea since 1895. When Japan forced the Joseon dynasty, the last dynasty of Korea, to sign the Treaty of Ganghwa. This treaty opened up Korea to Japan's trade, but did not allow Koreans equal rights to the Japanese.
In 1910, Japan declared total control of Korea, and over the next 25 years, they left their mark on the country. Japan was modernized with new roads, railways, telegraph lines, and new schools. However, despite these improvements, the Koreans became worse off. Within Korea, all the top positions were held by the Japanese, and in the 1930s, Japan began a program to get rid of the Korean identity. This program included banning the Korean language in schools and requiring all Koreans to adopt Japanese names. The Japanese tried to integrate the Koreans into their society, but only as an underclass. By the end of the Second World War, many Japanese had immigrated to Korea, and the Japanese civilian population totaled 850,000, with approximately 240,000 in the colonial government. Thousands of Korean patriots protesting peacefully were killed by the Japanese using force.
Japan surrendered to the Allies at the end of the World War II. Following the atomic bomb of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, leading to the end of Japanese occupation of Korea, the Soviet Union and the United States agreed to a peaceful divide of Korea along the 30th parallel to share control over the country.
Stage 2. Early growth. The Korean people wanted unity and freedom throughout their country and broke out into a civil war. The Korean People's Republic, KPR, was a provisional government of Korean nationalists, which became increasingly popular as well as communist.
Stage 3. Deadlock. On 25th June 1950, the Korean War began when 75,000 soldiers from the North Korean People's Army powered across the 30th parallel to invade the South. The US were afraid of the spread of communists during the Cold War, and so decided to defend South Korea. However, they were unprepared and called on the United Nations for help. The British and US sent fleets of troops to defend. However, North Korea advanced further south. The United States were able to hold the Posen bridgehead, and further reinforcements arrived. The UN force pushed the North Koreans to the Yalu River, bordering China. The Chinese, angry, then became involved. Recently a communist country, they wanted to spread communism and so pushed the US forces back to Seoul. Under the control of General Ridgway, the new fuel general, the South managed to gain control to the south of the 30th parallel.
Stage 4. Looking for a way out. Despite China attacking the south, the US were able to keep the imposing force off. However, they did not attempt to push the Chinese further north like they had tried previously. Both forces were stationed at the 38th parallel, and two options seemed apparent: for the fighting and bloodshed to continue, or for the US to use their nuclear weapons. American officials feared without a ceasefire with the North Koreans, the alternative would be a wider war with Russia and China.
Stage 5. Settling the dispute or resolving the conflict. With neither of these favorable to either party, The North and South created an agreement on the 30th parallel to end the war and stop fighting. No peace treaty was signed. There was no land gained in the war, which was a civil war caught up in a Cold War conflict.
Stage 6. Cooperation. To this day, North and South Korea have virtually nothing to do with one another and do not work with each other 60 years after the war. It doesn't look as though peace will be made between the two vastly different countries anytime soon. However, there is always hope.
It is obvious that Japan's occupation caused unsettlement and upset throughout Korea. This led them to wanting freedom. Japan would not give them, although Japan's surrender in World War II should have led Korea being a free country. This was not the case, as Russia and the United States took over the North and South respectively. The Koreans grew tired, and the Civil War broke out between the North Communist and the South Constitutional Republic.
The involvement of the US, UK, UN, China, and the Soviet Union increased the bloodshed and violence, turning it into a Cold War conflict. This would not have happened without the Japanese occupation decades earlier. Connections between the two events are so immense that it is difficult to distinguish between the two. The Japanese occupation of Korea, 1895 to 1945, created a war so devastating that peace is not fully restored today.